I'm back at it. Gonna try to tackle some functions today. I'm starting a new lesson set. So, welcome to join and stick around.
You now have the ability to control the flow of your JavaScript programs using conditional statements and loops. With just these simple tools, you can already build some pretty impressive programs.
However, as the problems you face get more and more complex, so too will the code you write. But there's an easy way to fix this.
As your code gets longer, inevitably, there will be code that repeats the same number of steps. Instead of repeating the same steps multiple times, we can package up those processes into reusable chunks of code called functions.
To understand why functions are so useful, let's think about something you might use in your day-to-day life.
How about a microwave? We've got one right here.
Yeah, that works. When you use a microwave to heat things up.
Like pizza, because I hate cold pizza. And we just so happen to have some cold pizza right here.
Yeah, like pizza. When you use a microwave to heat things up, like pizza, you first need to tell the microwave how long to heat it up for based on the number of slices. Let's say it takes about 1.5 minutes per slice. Then you need to set the microwave to 50% power, since you're reheating the pizza, not cooking it. And after all that, you hit start, and you wait, and then there's your pizza. This method for heating up pizza works, but it could be quite time-consuming having to set the microwave every time. Thankfully, at least in our microwave, there's a pizza reheat button that sets the power level and heating time. James just needs to tell it how many slices he has.
This pizza reheat button works like a function. Functions are just lines of code all packaged together that we can use and reuse when we need them. In most cases, a function is given some data, performs operations on the data, and then returns the altered data. The input you give the function, or argument as it's usually called in programming, is the number of pizza slices. The operation it performs is setting the power and time to reheat the pizza, and its returned output is the reheated pizza.
It's like a shortcut.
Exactly. The pizza reheat button hides the steps for reheating pizza and makes it easier to reheat as many slices of pizza as we want without having to redo all the settings from scratch each time.
That's assuming all the pieces will fit in the microwave.
Right.
All right. I'm going to be tackling functions.
The ability to generalize code for a variety of possible inputs is a powerful tool when creating easy-to-understand, non-repetitive code. Take this example. Here's a function that reverses a string. You can pass in the string Julia as an argument, and it will reverse it and return Ailuge or Iluge, who knows. There are quite a few steps involved in this process. The function has one parameter, a variable reverse me, that will be used to store the argument. In this case, the string Julia. The function has a variable called reverse that will eventually contain the final string with all the characters in reverse order. It then loops over the reverse me string from back to front and adds each character in that order to the reversed variable. Finally, it returns the result, so we can print it using console.log. Like I said, there's a lot going on here.
I don't think we've covered arrays yet, but this is an array right here.
If all of these steps were not wrapped inside this reverse string function, you would have to repeat this code over and over and over every time you wanted to reverse the characters in a string. Using a function simplifies the process by wrapping all this code together and generalizing the process for all strings. It allows you to use and then even reuse the function by just calling it by its name and passing in a different string each time. Let's take a closer look at how functions work and the different ways you can define and call functions in JavaScript.
Cool. Excited about functions. Function recap, or declaring functions. So how to declare a function. Functions allow you to package lines of code that you can use and reuse in your program. Sometimes they take parameters like pizza button. From the beginning of this lesson, reheat pizza had one parameter, the number of slices. Function, reheat pizza, number of slices, code begins. The reverse string function that you also saw had one parameter, the string to be reversed. In both cases, the parameter is listed as a variable after the function name. So this name, other name. And if there were multiple parameters, you would just separate them with commas. Function double greeting, name, other name. Code to greet two people. But if you can also have functions that don't have any parameters, instead they just package up some code and perform some tasks. In this case, you would just leave the parentheses empty. This one, for example, here's a simple function that prints out hello. Function, say hello, var message, hello, console.message, hello, or console.log message. If you tried pasting any of the functions above into JavaScript console, you probably didn't notice much happen. In fact, in fact, you probably just saw undefined. Back to you. Undefined is just the default return value. Okay, guys, this is going to be important later because if your function does not return anything, it actually always returns undefined on the console when nothing is explicitly returned using the special return keyboard. Return statements. In say hello, the function above, a value is printed to the console with console.log, but not explicitly returned with a return statement. You can write a return statement by using the return keyword followed by the expression or the value you want to return. Function say hello, var message equals hello, return message, okay? How to run a function. Now to get your function to do something, you'd have to invoke it or call, okay? Using the function name followed by parentheses with any arguments that are passed into it. Functions are like machines. You can build machines, but it won't do anything unless you also turn it on. Here's how you would call the say hello function from before, and then use the return value to print to the console. Function say hello, var message hello, return message, console.log say hello, prints hello, parameters and arguments. At first, it can be tricky to know when something is either a parameter or an argument. The key difference is in where they show up. A parameter is always going to be a variable name and appears in the function declaration. On the other hand, an argument is always going to be a value, any of the JavaScript data types, and will always appear in the code when the function is called or invoked. Try declaring and calling some functions on your own. Use the following function to answer this question. Function find average. Var answer equals x plus y, so this is in turn answer. So var average equals find average. So 5 plus 9 is 14 divided by 2 is 7. Okay. Question 2 of 2. Function find the average. Oh, is that the same thing? Function find average. Function find average. Var answer return. Oh, x and y. Are x and y parameters or arguments? Good question. They are parameters because they show up in here. They are parameters. Okay. Arguments. Okay, so a parameter is always going to be a variable name and appears in the function declaration, meaning in here. Okay. An argument is always going to be a value and will always appear in the code when the function is called. So right here, this is the argument, okay? And this is a parameter, okay? Got it? What you've learned so far. Function package up code so you can easily use and reuse. Parameters are variables that are used to store the data that's passed into a function. Arguments are the actual data that's passed into the function when it is invoked. Got it, guys? Okay. This is an argument, and this is a parameter. Got it? the function body is enclosed inside curly brackets. Okay, return statement, and this is how you invoke and call, and then returns 3. Okay. All right. Quiz. Laugh it off. Declare a function called laugh that returns ha 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 ha. Print the value returned from the laugh function to the console. Okay, so it returns ha 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 ha. Okay, so we're going to create a function, and we're going to have an argument. And okay, so this doesn't really return, it's just return ha 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 ha. So console.log, so here we call the function called laugh. And what is this? Eval missing before, okay, this one. Okay, function. We put, oh, function laugh. Sorry. Got to name your function. Okay, interesting. Function laugh. Let's take a look at here. Okay, there it is. Function, the name, and then okay. Missing before statement. What are we missing? Function laugh. Return ha ha ha. Console.log ha 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 ha. Is that missing that? No. Okay. Is there a space here? Is that the problem? What is the problem? Function, add, body, return. So we're not returning any, oh, we are returning laugh. Return ha 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 ha. Missing before statement, missing semicolon. Oh, I wonder what is, okay. So right here, function, and then you return the sum. In this case, we're just returning a string. So technically, this is just coming out as a string. So declare a function called laugh. Okay. Okay, laugh. All right. Missing. Ooh, that's nifty. Print the value returned from laugh. So we call laugh, and then interesting. That's not it. Yeah. No. No.
Are you able to check restaurants right now?
I'm doing something.
Okay.
I thought we already said that.
No, but there's 3 places I wanted you to check.
Okay.
They're
We can
all
just decide.
well. They're all 3. Do you want more of a rolls, or do you want more like fish, like because you light and healthy? They're more sushi.
I guess we kind of want a little.
Or
bit
do
of
you
both.
want more on the rolls?
I think you like more rolls, right?
Well, I don't mind trying the other one
Yeah,
too.
then let's just try it because we've never been there before.
Yeah, but it's more expensive though. $2 more. It's $30 per person.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, that's fine, honey. Okay, function laugh. Is that the problem? Is it because I capitalized function? Oh my gosh. Okay, guys, it's case sensitive. Ha 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 ha. Cool. So laugh 2. All right, write a function called laugh and takes one parameter called num that represents the number of ha to return. Okay, so doing the same thing, function ha, and it takes num, right? And it's the number of ha, okay? And so so it's return. Oh, okay. Let's see. What is it supposed to do? So make sure your final character has an exclamation mark. Make sure that your function produces the correct number of results. So tip, you might need to loop to solve this for sure. Here's an example. Okay, so it's ha, ha, ha. Okay, so number of ha. Function laugh. And then this one is for let. Okay, for let x equals num, while x is less than or equal to num plus plus or x plus plus. And basically what this for loop will do is it'll just say let's see. Maybe we'll just say var equals var ha. Okay. And then ha equals ha equal plus equal ha. Plus equal ha. Okay. All right, let's try this out. So console.log laugh 3. Oh, forgot to put this. Okay, undefined because we didn't return. Return ha. Undefined ha. That's funny. So laugh. So we create a variable called ha, and then ha equals just ha, and then we return ha after. So if we do laugh 3, it's funny. It says undefined ha. So console.log laugh. It says undefined ha. Maybe we do this. Okay. Okay. There you go. So ha. So x equals num. So x equals 0, or x equals 1 because we want to say ha ha ha. Ha ha ha. Okay, so if we did 1 million, oh, it's gonna be crazy. Let's see if we'll crash the servers. Happy Friday, guys. TGIF. Yeah, it certainly did. We'll bring it down to 100. Ha 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 ha. Submit the answer. Oh, they did say make sure you have an exclamation mark in the end. So it'd be ha plus that. Okay, we're just adding an exclamation mark in there. Okay, cool. Moving right along. Returning versus logging. Okay, interesting.
So there's a couple of different ways to get your function to produce some sort of output. You should already be familiar with using console.log to print out messages to the console, which you can do inside a function or directly from the console, which is something we did way back in the very first lesson of this course. Now, if you remember all the way back to that lesson, when you first used console.log, then you might also remember seeing the word undefined displayed after your message. So the question is, what is undefined and where exactly is it coming from? Well, in reality, undefined is actually what is being returned back from the console.log function when you call it. You see, any function is always going to return some value back to the caller. If a return value is not specified, then the function will just return back undefined. When you call console.log and pass it a message, you are in effect calling the console.log function, passing in an argument, which is your message, and then it's returning back undefined. However, the function is also printing out the message back to the console. So the way to look at it is there's two different ways you can get your function to produce some sort of output. The first way is printing messages using console.log, and the second way is by using the return keyword and a value to return back some value to the caller. Two important things to point out here is that the return keyword will be used to stop the execution of a function, and it's going to return a value back to the caller. If nothing is defined as a value to be returned back, then undefined is going to be returned back automatically. Now, if that didn't make any sense, let's look at some code and hopefully it will become a little more clear. Now, one thing to keep in mind as I do this is that console.log and return are not the same thing. So this example should show the key difference between the two. All right, so I've got a function here that I've written to tell me if an integer greater than 2 is a prime number. Now, if you're not familiar with prime numbers, a number is basically prime if it can't be divided by any other numbers besides itself and 1. That's not a super formal definition for a prime number, but stay with me. The important thing here is that you see the difference between console.log and return. So the way this function works is if an integer passed to the function is a prime number, then it's going to return true. It's that simple. But if the number is not prime, then it will print to the console the first number that our integer that we're passing here is divisible by, and then it will return false. So again, don't worry too much about the details of this function, but I'm going to copy it and paste it over into the console, and then we'll run it and see what kind of output we get back. All right, so I know 11 is a prime number, so let's call our function and see what we get back. So we'll type is prime 11, and we get back true. Perfect, that's what we want to see. If you look at our function, that means when I passed 11 to it, that it started at the number 2 and went all the way to the number 10, because we're less than 11, so this loop would end at number 10, and it never found a number 11 was divisible by. So it never hit this conditional statement, it never got inside this conditional statement, and it just returned true, okay? Now let's try passing in another number. So how about 49? Because 49 is an odd number, it's kind of weird, and I can't really remember if it's divisible by 7 or not. So, okay, cool. So it is divisible by 7, and we get the return value of false. Again, if you look at our function, that means when I passed 49 to it, that we started at 2 and looped until 7, and when the loop reached 7, our condition finally evaluated to true. So once that happened, it printed 49 is divisible by 7 to the console, and then it returned false. Now the key thing here is that when this return statement was called, this returned false, our function completely exited. It didn't keep looping over more numbers to find out if 49 was divisible by 8, 9, 10, and so on. It printed this out, and then once our function hit the return statement, completely exited the function, we were done. So let's recap. Biggest takeaways here are that a function is always going to return something, okay? Let me remove these return, and let's run our function again without the return statements in there and see what happens. Okay, so now I've removed the returns, and let's call like is prime, and we'll do 49 again. So it still prints out our statement that 49 is divisible by 7, and it looks like it's not divisible by anything else either, because it would have continued to loop here and go 8, 9, 10, all the way up until 48. But you'll see that here it didn't return anything. It just returned undefined. So if you don't specify any sort of return, then your function's always just going to return back as undefined. So the second thing to remember is that console.log is not the same thing as a return statement. So console.log is great for printing out values to test your code and giving you helpful feedback, but it's not a return statement.
Oh, sorry, guys. Yep. Okay, so it is important to understand that return and print are not the same thing. Printing a value to the JavaScript console only displays a value that you can view for debugging purposes, but the value it displays can't really be used. So return, it is important to understand that return and print are not the same thing. Printing a value to the JavaScript console only displays the value that you can view for debugging purposes. But the value it displays can't really be used for anything more than just that. For reasons, you should remember to use only console to test your code in JavaScript console. Paste the value function, paste the following function declaration invocation into JavaScript console to see the difference between logging and printing, okay? So we're gonna go right click, inspect. We're gonna copy that function. Okay. We're going to go to console. And I usually like to clear the console. And then we're going to paste this and hit enter. Okay. And then so to return printing. Is this working was called 3. And 3 was passed in as an argument. Okay. Returning. I am returning the string. Okay, so returning I am the string. So this is what it does. So like that's console.print. And this one is return. So return comes out like that. Okay. If you don't explicitly define a return value, the function will return undefined by default. Okay, function, is this working? So this is the same one, but without the return value. Okay. So it didn't really, we didn't call it, we just defined it. So I don't know if we can say, is this working? Okay, we can actually can. So 3 times. So printing, okay. So it returns undefined. Is this working? Okay, so question 1 of 3. What does this function return? Okay, so it will return this one, because remember, it actually, it'll actually, once it hits this return, it stops executing. Okay, so it's almost like a break. So it'll return that. 2 of 3, what are the numbers will be printed to JavaScript console? So if you do this, return. Okay, so what number will be printed? So function square. So squaring is squaring and returns it. Okay. Function subtract 4. So it will square and subtract 4. Okay, so console.log. So subtract 4 is what's called. So 5 square is 25 minus 4 is 21. Okay. Question 3 of 3. What do you think will happen with the following code? Function test, return 1, return 2. So it's going to return 1 because remember, it stops executing here, right? Okay, guys, that was good. Using return values. Returning a value from a function is great, but that's what use of a return value if you're not going to use the value to do something. A function return value can be stored in a variable or reused throughout your program. Here we have a function that adds 2 numbers together and another function that divides a number by 2. We can find the average of 5 and 7 by using add function to add a pair of numbers together and then passing them to the sum of 2 numbers, and then passing the sum into the function divide by 2 as an argument. And finally, we can even store the final answer in a variable called average and use that variable to perform even more calculations. So here's how they did it. Function add, so return x plus y. Function divide by 2 is just returning that number divided by 2. And then this is how you would use it. Okay, so quiz question. Try to predict what will be printed to the console.log statement below. Then check your prediction by pasting the code into the Java console. So add 10. So x will be add by 10, and then divide by 3. So so you call 2. So 2 is the argument and you add 10 to it, so that's 12. So 12 divided by 3. So the result is divided by 3 is equals 4, of course. Okay. All right, guys. Scope.
Let's take a moment to talk about scope. Apart from regular syntax errors, scope will be at the heart of many coding bugs you run into in pretty much any programming language. When programmers talk about scope, they're talking about the part of the program where a particular identifier, such as a variable or function name, is visible or accessible. Trying to figure out if something is in scope can be tricky at first. So let's start with an analogy.
Hey,
Hey,
do you know where I could find the book Great Expectations?
yeah, that's in the classic literature section. Come follow me.
Perfect.
In the example you just saw, James was able to get information about the book he wanted because he asked for the book while he was in the library. You could say that the information about where the book was is in scope.
Hey, I'm looking for this book, Great Expectations. Do you know where I could find it?
Yeah, I mean, the library is right here. I don't know why you're asking me.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In the second example, when James was outside the library, the information he wanted and where he was requesting the information from was no longer in the same scope. So he couldn't find the book, and he couldn't really ask anyone to give him information about how to find it.
Okay.
Let's take a moment to talk about scope. Apart from regular syntax errors, scope will be at the heart of many coding bugs you run into in pretty much any programming language. When programmers talk about scope, they're talking about the part of the program where a particular identifier, such as a variable or function name, is visible or accessible. Trying to figure out if something is in scope can be tricky at first. So let's start with an analogy.
Hey,
Hey,
do you know where I could find the book Great Expectations?
yeah, that's in the classic literature section. Come follow me.
Perfect.
In the example you just saw, James was able to get information about the book he wanted because he asked for the book while he was in the library. You could say that the information about where the book was is in scope.
Hey, I'm looking for this book, Great Expectations. Do you know where I could find it?
Yeah, I mean, the library is right here. I don't know why you're asking me.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
In the second example, when James was outside the library, the information he wanted and where he was requesting the information from was no longer in the same scope. So he couldn't find the book, and he couldn't really ask anyone to give him information about how to find it.
Okay, cool. So pretty straightforward.
In JavaScript, you have two different kinds of scope: global scope and function scope. If you define an identifier outside of all of your functions, it is considered part of the global scope. That means the variable can be accessed everywhere within your program. It's available globally. All functions in your program can access variables defined in global scope. On the other hand, you also have function scope. If an identifier is defined inside of a function, it will be visible everywhere inside that function, even inside other functions inside that function. In this example here, the variable James is defined in global scope. The variable librarian has function scope, and it's accessible in both the library function and the classic literature function. The book also has function scope, but it's only visible in the classic literature function. If you try to access the book variable outside of the classic literature function, you will get a reference error. The way this works is when the JavaScript engine tries to find an identifier, like let's say the James variable here, it first looks to see if that identifier is defined in the current function. And if it finds it there, then its job is done. But if it can't find it in the current function, it then moves out one level, and then another level, and then another level. and it keeps moving to the outer functions until it's no longer in a function. That means it has reached global scope. If the JavaScript engine checks all of the outer functions and global scope and it still can't find the identifier, then it will return an error. Here, it did find the identifier, James, out there in global scope. Now that you have the basics of global and function scope, let's take a moment to practice what you've learned.
Okay, so which of these variables is defined in the global scope? So this is global. Anything that's not in the function is global, so A. And okay, where can you print out the value of variable C without resulting in an error? Variable C can only be used within function Y, okay? Because it's I guess the word is local, but I think they're using block because it's only in this block, or I should say it's local to function Y. So it's really just anywhere in function Y. Okay. Oh, try again. So C. So where can you print out the value of variable C without resulting in an error? Anywhere inside the Y function. So it's Y and also Z, okay? Because Z is within scope, is within within Y, okay? It's nested. So those two, okay? You wouldn't be able to do it anywhere in the script, and X is definitely not local. Ooh, what is shadowing?
Scope can be a tricky subject, especially when you're bouncing between global and function scope. One of the gotchas scope can result in is called scope overriding or shadowing. To show you how this works and how you can avoid it, let's take a look at the following code example. Here we have the same variable book title being assigned values in two different scopes. The book title in the global scope is assigned the value Le Petit Prince, and the book title in this function scope is assigned the value The Little Prince. If we print out the value of book title at each part of this program, you'll see that in the final console.log statement that The Little Prince is printed out. However, at this point in the code, we're no longer in the function scope of the display book English function. So why is the book title Le Petit Prince not being printed instead? Well, this is a classic case of scope overriding or shadowing. When we reach the fifth line of this code, the book title variable from the global scope is actually being reassigned with the value The Little Prince. So the book title here is being reassigned by the book title here. That means when we finally reach the last console.log in this code, book title in the global scope has been changed, even though we exited the function scope. To prevent this from happening, we're going to simply declare a new variable inside the display book English function. So instead of just reassigning book title, we're going to create a different variable. So now we've got a variable inside display book English that is relative to this function scope, and our book title that's declared in the global scope will remain unchanged. And that way, when we reach the 10th line in our code and we print it out for the third time, it's going to print out what we expect, Le Petit Prince.
Without pasting your code in the console, what do you think this will print out? So x equals 1, function, add 2, x equals x plus 2, add 2, x equals x plus 1. Okay, so even though we did this and we did this, the fact that we're only printing after here, so you know, x equals x plus 1, so we added 2 to it, so it's now 3. And we called it, and so 3 plus 1, so it's going to be 4. Okay. Without pasting your console, what do you think this code will print out? So function add 2, variable equals x plus 2, so add 2. It was called, so 1 plus 2 is 3, so 3 plus 1 is 4. So that'll still be 4. Ah, they tricked me. Okay. X equals 1. Oh, here they did they declared X again. So here X is undefined. Okay. So so X is so here X equals X plus 2. So X is undefined here. Okay. So when you call this, X becomes undefined. So undefined plus 1. So it's just going to be 2. Okay. Okay, cool. All right, guys, we're going to stop right here. And, we will come back again tonight. If not tomorrow, we're doing a meetup tomorrow in K-Town. If any of you guys in LA who can make it, we'll see you there. All right. Talk to you soon.